Hey everyone, it's Joel McDonald with Just Get Out of Town, and I've got Kaci Newman with me. Say hi, Kaci.
Hello, hello, everyone.
Kaci, thanks so much for joining us. So, a lot of times we'll do videos and we will have subscribers on who share a trip they booked for the future or whatever. But with everything going on right now with COVID, uh, thought it would be good to talk with Kaci. Kaci went to Aruba this month in July. Um, and I know we get tons of questions from people who are curious. What's it like at the airport? What's it like booking trips? How do you know if you're able to go or you're going to be turned away, and so on? So I thought it would be a good idea to just kind of have a candid conversation with Kaci. We'll talk about three things. One, how long has she been a subscriber with Jake Goot? How'd you find this deal? Two, are going to be the big elephant in the room. What's it like at the airport? What are restrictions? Did you have to go get a test? All that kind of stuff. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about how long have you been a JGoot subscriber? How'd you find this trip? How was that process?
Sure. So I have been a subscriber for about 6 months now.
Okay.
And so definitely pre-COVID. And when I signed up, I'm like, this is a great idea because I'm so busy. I don't have time to scour these websites and keep up with every single alert and, every single subscription. So, I mean, this is just a one-stop shop where I can come. Not only get amazing deals, but also get some really great insight from people that are doing it and maybe get some good ideas for places I never even thought of traveling to. And so that's kind of how I stumbled upon the Aruba vacation deal. And, I started thinking, like, wow. I heard that maybe the Caribbean might be opening, and maybe that might be something that I want to explore since all my other trips got canceled that that I actually had plans due to COVID-19. So I kind of was trying to find some type of, you know, uh, solace or like a bounce back trip or something to just kind of create some sense of normalcy, after everything that's been going on. And so that's what really motivated me to explore that link when I saw it come across my inbox.
Cool. Well, and that's for anyone watching. That's the JGoot philosophy is, you just watch for deals every day, whether you're planning a trip or not. And then every once in a while, a deal looks good and inspires you to plan the trip. So that's what you did. Um, you poked around. Did you just book the flight? Did you have to tweak the dates much? Did you bundle it with the hotel? Well, what'd you do for
Yeah.
that?
Um, so initially, when I saw the deal, it was just for the flight. But of course, when you click that link, it gives you so many options, not only how you want to travel, business class or whatnot, but it also gives you some bundling options. And so when I saw that there was a bundling option and it was about 543 for a week, and I had to click on that. I said, wait, this is too good to be true. So I clicked
So
on it, and I think that it was for 3 star and above. And I'm like, well, no, I kind of have a little bit of a standard when I travel. I'm like, I want it to be 4 star and above. So I clicked on that. I'm like, watch it be some astronomical price. And it literally went up like $30. So I hopped on the phone, I called one of my friends who is an entrepreneur and has a very flexible schedule like myself. And I said, hey, you're not going to believe what I saw on this website. Check this out and let me know what you think. And if you're down to go, like I'm down to go. So we maybe spent an hour going back and forth about the details or whatnot and just decided to book that same day.
nice. So basically, like $600 per person for flight and five five nights in Aruba at a pretty nice
Yeah.
resort. Did the resort meet up with your expectations based on the reviews on Travelocity and all that?
Yes, the resort was phenomenal. We stayed at this place called Swiss Paradise. It's ran by a really great guy named Jorg. He's from Switzerland, and he started this little, group of villas in this amazing landscape. And it's just the customer service, the communication, the location, everything was so perfect. I wouldn't have been able to even pick better if I had done hours of research myself. And so they really paired with a really great, once you kind of put that 4-star better indication there, I think that, they did a really great job with pairing.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
that's great, and we're excited for you. And just so this doesn't turn into a commercial for Jay Goot, let's move on to the elephant in the room,
Sure.
um, and talk about traveling in March of 2020 with COVID restrictions. So, like, let's start with before the airport. Let's start with, like, how did you research and verify that you were comfortable going to Aruba, and like making sure you weren't going to be turned around at the border? What did
Yeah.
you have to do for that?
So I'd heard some kind of murmurings about maybe, not a lot of Caribbean islands were open. And then, I kind of heard that Aruba might be on the forefront of that. And so I'm like, okay, well, they're saying that, they're completely COVID free and, they're contemplating whether they want to open their borders or not. And so it was still kind of like we didn't know quite when they were going to open their borders when we booked. And so we booked in June. I want to say like around June 10th. And we had originally planned to go from July 4th to the 11th, so for 1 week. And it ended up happening that they did open their borders on July 1st, but they only opened it to like Europe and, Bonaire, Curacao. It was not open to the US. And so
Okay.
I actually had to change my reservation to the 11th because they were opening to the US on July 10th. So
Okay.
we pushed it a week and we left on July 11th instead of July 4th. And, everything leading up to getting on the plane was very, very well laid out. They had a whole website for tourists, specifying what we needed. And some of the things that we needed was initially you could either post a negative COVID results within 3 days of travel, or you could get to the Aruban airport and test there. Now, this was back in like maybe mid-June that they were saying these things on the website. Come end of June, they're like, okay, some of these states in the United States are getting way too much press. It's way too much, too many headlines about hot spots and spikes and all of this stuff. And so they actually came out with a list of states that were not able to test in Aruba. They had to test and test negative and post those results within 72 hours of their flight departure, or else they would not be admitted. And
Uh,
so that was probably the most stressful part because, as you know, depending on what city you're in the US, there are backlogs upon backlogs of trying to wait and get your test results quickly. And if you're trying to do the rapid testing, it's really hard to get an appointment and it's just a mess in some places. And so I see, I kind of feel maybe that was a big barrier for a lot of US citizens that were trying to go over there. But for those of us that were fortunate enough to complete all the requirements, so that was one. The other requirement was you needed to purchase a Aruban specific COVID-19 insurance, and so that was about $15 a day, and that basically covered if you were to catch COVID on the island, all of your medical fees, any type of repatriation fees that you might need. And it just basically kind of was you have to check this box. Even if you have your own insurance, you have to purchase ours. And so having all of those kind of requirements beforehand, yes, it was tedious. Yes, it was kind of a pain in the butt. But it kind of created this sense of, hey, we're going into a safer space than maybe someone or country who did not have all of those requirements.
right. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing. So people who are wondering, they can go in with eyes wide open. And if you really want to travel, if you're really dying from cabin fever and need to get out of town, that's an extra step that you probably need to be prepared to take. Especially if, I mean, maybe not if you're traveling in the 48 states, but if you're going to, travel internationally,
Mhm.
look that up, figure out what you got to do. You're probably going to have to take a test. Um, but okay, so you did that. You were comfortable. You got your test results. Did you
Mhm.
do the brain poke flu test thing?
Yes, it was highly uncomfortable. highly.
Hey, but us travel addicts got to do what we got to do,
I
right?
know we do. We do. A small price to pay for the time I had for sure.
All right, so next on the list that everyone I'm sure is wondering about, what was it like at the airport? This is kind of
Sure.
becoming the new normal. What was that like for you?
So, I mean, of course, since probably May 11th, there's been a mandate of all airlines are expecting, passengers to wear a face mask the entire time that they're on the flight. And in the airport, it's also, it's not like one of those like everyone's going to be, following you around and reporting you to someone, but it's the social expectation that you're wearing a mask in the airport as well. And so, that's something that I think people are already kind of used to. When we touched down in Aruba, it's just to remind all of you, this was the very next day after they had opened the borders to the US. And so we were kind of in the we're the tests, we're the guinea pigs, and so I don't know if the Aruban airport is usually this kind of militaristic with all of their guidelines and how like we were able to move, but they literally from the time we got off the airplane were telling us exactly where to go, where to stand. You can't, go over here. You can't wander off there. You have to use the bathroom. Just hold it because we don't know what's going on. And they were just very, very adamant about, okay, you need to go through this process. You need to go through this, and this. To make sure that they kind of had everybody under control and had an accountability for everyone who got off of each plane. So I want to say there may be about 3 or 4 planes that landed at the same time or within maybe 30, 40 minutes of each other. So there was a very long wait to get through customs, to go through TSA, have your bags checked, to make sure that your paperwork that you'd submitted online as far as your negative test, they verified that. They did take your temperature. They did ask all of the typical questions. Do you have a fever? Do you have any symptoms? All of that. And then, kind of once you checked all those boxes, you were free to go. And so it was a long process and I didn't even
Yeah.
check any bags and it was still long for me. But I think that as they get more efficient at, having, they get used to having people from the US and from over the world come and they get kind of more efficient with that process, it'll go quicker. I think it was just because we were kind of like the first batch where, they maybe have been a little overly cautious and it took them maybe a little bit longer than what it should have.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, it's things are adjusting. It sounds like the airports and Aruba takes this seriously. Um, why don't we pull up a few pictures? Let's talk
Yeah.
about your experience in Aruba itself, like, and
Yeah.
especially from a COVID standpoint, like how many restaurants were open, what were the beaches like, was all of that
Yeah.
normal or what?
So when we got there, there were several tourists there, but mainly from Europe, right? And so they had been, of course, able to come to Aruba from July 1st. So they had kind of had about a week and a half, head start on us. And really, the feedback was not a lot of restaurants and places had really opened up until they opened up the border to the US. So we were kind of on the front ends of a lot of very famous restaurants, bars, usual hangouts, excursions, tour companies. We were on the forefront of them, like really ramping up their operations and being open. One thing that I can say is that the whole island, I mean, barely anyone wore a mask. Like no one was wearing masks anywhere. Social distancing was kind of not really that much of a thing. Like they had different, you know, in the supermarket, you had to stand 6 feet apart and they had the little markings on the floor and stuff like that. But it wasn't as strict as what I thought it might be from my experience in the airport. And so I think once you kind of got over that initial hurdle, things were much more normalized on the island itself. There were different restaurants, depending on the caliber of the restaurants, that did take your temperature before you walked in. And they did strategically kind of place you to create some distance. But I mean, if you're going to the mom and pop shops or the little dive bars, they're not concerns at all. And so you kind of got a mix. But yeah, the one thing I did really notice was the lack of mask wearing. So
Okay. All right. Again, good for travelers to know.
mhm.
And every place is probably going to be different, just like every state in the U.S. is different. We had
Yep.
family visit us just last week, 2 weeks ago, and they did a 4 state road trip, and I mean they saw massive differences between, like in Chicago they got, death stares for refilling on gas without wearing their mask, and South Dakota, not a single
Yeah.
mask in sight. So, I mean, you're going
Yeah.
to see that in the States anyway. And again, if it's a concern, that's something you can research and get on TripAdvisor and make your own decision. So, um, yeah,
Well, this
cool.
is my first review, so TripAdvisor doesn't even have this information from me.
Uh, well, thanks for sharing, because I know a ton of people are wondering. So we appreciate it.
No
Tell
problem.
any favorite experiences that you recommend people do in Aruba?
Yeah, and so this is when the villa owner York, his whole family came from Switzerland, and it just happened to coincide that we were there at the same time, and so it really was kind of like we were all family at that point, and we went out to eat. Um, it's a huge Dutch influence on the island, and so that's something that I didn't know, and didn't really understand the background with it. But Aruba is actually part of the Netherlands. And so there were a very large amount of Dutch and other European tourists there. And then, as far as the US goes, a lot of folks coming from the Eastern Shoreboard. And so we're talking about Boston, New York, a lot of Florida, North Carolina, Washington, D.C. And so coming from Texas, it was very different to, kind of be in the mix with so many different cultures. I mean, how Southern versus Eastern, but then also keeping in mind all of that Dutch influence was really cool too. And so when you talk about the cuisine, you have some Dutch influence there, a lot of different Dutch restaurants, but then also the traditional Caribbean. If you want jerk or curry, a lot of fresh fish options and seafood and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it was a really good mix of restaurants, culture, and just things to do in general. So yeah, I guess one of those pictures, we went on an excursion with a very well-known company called ABC Tours, and we rode. I'm wanting to say that this is not an ATV. It was called something else, and I'm terrible with knowing what these vehicles are called. But it was
Yeah,
all terrain. Sorry.
I thought those were ATVs too.
Yeah, no, it's called something else, like a souped up version. But anyway, they took us all throughout the countryside. We were able to see a lot of different natural, natural bridges coming into these really like natural made swimming pools, and it was just beautiful against like volcanic rock, and so it was really amazing to see just the history and kind of like the more remote sides of the island. And so I definitely would recommend that ABC Tours. The tour guide was amazing, and we just had a really, really good time. It was a half a day. The other tour that we did, and we kind of slated our tours back to back. And so we went one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And the other tour that we did was snorkeling, and we did 3 different snorkeling sites with a group of people. We were on a pirate ship, and it's this company called Jolly Pirates. They were absolutely hysterical, like just cracking jokes the whole time. Everyone had a really, really great time together. They had complimentary barbecue, an open bar, and we were just able to jump right off the boat with our snorkel gear and see really, really cool fish and a huge ship that was, in ruins underneath on the seabed, and so that was just a really awesome experience too.
Nice. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing these pictures. We don't get to
Yeah.
do that a lot of times, so it's a good overview for anyone who's thinking of Aruba. My wife and I,
Mhm.
ironically, one of the first trips that kind of inspired me to start this company was an Aruba trip. I found a
Really?
cheap trip. I called my wife, who I was dating at the time, and I said, "Hey, you want to go to Aruba?" And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I found $192 flights." And it was the same thing, like we paid 600 something bucks to stay at a very nice resort, the Renaissance. It had
Oh
its own
yeah.
private island, um, flamingos and iguanas right there on the island. It
Yeah.
was like a boat that came right up in our lobby, and took
That's
us to the island.
amazing.
What was the name of the place you stayed?
I stayed in Swiss
Oh,
Paradise,
that's right. You
Swiss
said, oh,
Paradise
okay.
Village,
Yep.
and I want to say it was a 5 minute drive to the Marriott Renaissance. Now, I don't know if it was the same Renaissance you're talking about because I didn't see any boats going up to that one, but it was right on the water, and they had a whole restaurant right there in the sand. It was really beautiful, and so I will say that a lot of times when I travel, I like to kind of patron the local establishments, and so the people that have the B&Bs and that sort of thing, and so that's kind of my MO. But I really love the location of Swiss Paradise because we were right there by all of the action anyway, so I didn't feel like I was compromising anything just by kind of buying
Nice.
local.
I am going to take that as an opportunity to just kind of throw a little shameless plug in there for anyone watching that is not a JGoot subscriber. That's a prime example of the JGoot way of travel. Everything we do revolves around finding a cheap fare that'll get you there for 50 to 90% less. And then once you find dates that work for you, you can just book a flight. You can change the dates. You can choose a B&B, or you can choose a luxury resort, or you can choose a hostel for $6 a night. Um, we just, our philosophy is get your foot in the door, find a cheap flight that will get you there because they're all the same seats. It just so happens that this is a rare anomaly where it's a cheap flight. So may as well do that. And then put your money where you want to, whether it's excursions or better rooms or business class instead of coach or whatever. So we call it the JGoot way of travel. And there you go. So if anyone's interested, you could go to jgootway.com, check it out. It's free for 30 days. If you like it, you can continue for a monthly or yearly subscription. If you don't like it, that's cool too. But this is kind of an example of how a typical trip works. Find a cheap flight, play with the dates to see if it works, decide if you want to bundle it with a resort or not, and then you go and take your vacation. So I think we're about done with the pictures. This is a local beer.
Yes, it is. It was delicious too.
Any other recommendations you have for people either considering, things that you did that were fun in Aruba? And then, finally, what would you recommend for someone who is watching this video who is not a JGoot subscriber on, what would you recommend that they do if they're looking to travel more?
Sure. I think that definitely just staying abreast of the travel expectations, restrictions, requirements. Um, I think that I'm really grateful because not only was I able to kind of follow my mantra and kind of buy local with staying at Swiss Paradise, but Jorg, the owner, was so essential in keeping me up to date on the expectations for entry, on the dates that they were going to open to the US, and really kind of being my first line of information. Whereas I didn't have to go to the country website, or I didn't have to try to fish through a bunch of different blog posts or whatnot to get that information. He was kind of on the ground and knowing exactly, what I needed to do and communicating that with me. So I would just say if you can connect with, someone who's kind of on the ground and knows exactly when something is changing, they can alert you. I mean, that's so, so, so important. If not, then just really kind of bookmark those important websites that are giving legitimate information, on time information, and make sure that you have all of those boxes checked before you get on the plane because we wouldn't want you to get turned away. And also, I think in Aruba, don't just stay in the tourist spots. Aruba, literally, you can scale that whole island in 40 minutes driving. And so, explore a little bit. Even if you don't pay for a tour, just kind of take some time, rent a vehicle, and vehicles are relatively inexpensive to rent. I think I maybe paid $130 for the whole week for my rental. And it's very, very essential to have a rental car. I literally saw like 5 taxis the whole week. So I'm pretty sure maybe you can call them, but it's just better to kind of be able to get in the car and go. But yeah, explore the southern tip. That's where you're going to get some of the best deals on your seafood, really good quality food. And then just try to do some stuff that locals do. Yeah. So, I mean, the tourist parts, they're great, they're beautiful. But really kind of getting ingrained in the culture. I think that's where you're going to get your your richest experience.
Nice. Well, yeah, and then what about, so anyone who's watching this who isn't a JGoot subscriber, any recommendations you have for them?
I would say all of the promotional emails that you get, look them over and see if, if I got something like this and it was a different deal or a different set of 5 or 6 deals every day, like how many opportunities you could see yourself taking advantage of, and kind of really envision yourself taking advantage of that membership and enriching your life. I mean, travel is life. And I mean, what better way to do it than saving some money and being a part of a network of people that are doing the same thing as you and posting about their experiences? It really does become a community after a while. And so you're not just paying for the deals, you're kind of paying for that whole sense of community. And I don't think that you should hesitate to do it.
Cool. Well, we appreciate you being a part of that community. For anyone watching who liked what Kaci had to say, Kaci, you are a consultant. You help with HR. So anyone who liked Kaci and what she had to say and needs some help with their business, you want to tell them a little about what you do and how you can help them?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a human resources professional. I have an MBA with a HR management focus, and my background is oil and gas, but I have since diversified and really kind of gone to focusing on small and mid-sized companies who, maybe you're just starting off, maybe you have 2 or 5, 10 employees. You don't know what, heads or tails of HR is. I can assist you in end to end, any type of employment law, any type of recruiting, any type of performance management, discipline, terminations, everything that has to do with HR. I am kind of like a one-stop shop for that. And my company, Paychecks, has been phenomenal, and they've been doing this for years and years and years. And so we're not just a payroll company anymore. We are end-to-end HR. If you feel like that's something that you might want to take advantage of, go to paychecks.com, get more information there, and we'd be happy to schedule a consulting appointment with you.
Awesome. Well, Kaci, thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for being a loyal JGoot subscriber. And we can't wait to hear about your next trip.
Thank you. I can't wait to keep reading about everyone else's.
Thanks again.